says we're telling our followers. Oh, okay, so I'm here. Do you guys expect me to sing? That would be a concern. I didn't ask that question before. I said, let's switch it over to mine. Let's find out. Well, we're having trouble. We can't get our guest on Jerry's page, so we're going to try my page. So we're going to have Sharon try joining over here. I don't know. It might be. Yes, no, you don't want me to sing. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I can only sing when the music is playing, ideally loud. Then I sing. I mean, it's not that I don't sing. I sing all the time. But I need the music to prompt me, to help me out a little bit. I'm singing in my head, if you're wondering. Right now, I am. See? Did you know what the song was? Could you tell? Come on, guests. Where are my guests? Okay, well, I'll bring in Jerri.
You guys, she was singing, hey.
I was.
Dirty,
I totally
baby,
was.
I got your money,
Exactly.
your worries.
I'm so glad you got it.
And you learned 2 facts about ODB.
I learned what?
You learned 2 facts about, we call him ODB, Old Dirty Bastard, the guy that sings that song. So now you know it's ODB, and he changed his name to Big Baby Jesus before he died, and he is beloved by the people.
Now I know. So I'm learning today one way or the other. All right, Miss.
It's a funny fact.
Where is...
So
I
thought maybe it was because I was like, is it because I'm not following her? So I went and followed her, but that can't be it.
I don't...
I just think, I'm not sure that maybe she doesn't know how to accept the request, or it's not popping up. No? Is the audio bad? Oh my God.
I'm okay.
I can hear you fine. Can you guys not hear me very well?
I hear you fine.
Oh. Well, Carly says she can't hear me very well.
I don't think
Carly, turn up the volume. All right. Don't worry. We're going to cut all this out when I put it on YouTube.
Yeah, you get all cleaned up. I don't know why you guys deal with us live and you got to put up with all this stuff.
Okay. Everybody says they're okay on audio. Okay, we're good. All right.
I don't know what to say. I want to hear from our guest because she talks about interesting stuff.
I know, I do too.
She talks about, well, she's just pragmatic, but I do not remember following you.
Well, you're here now. Ha, ha, ha.
You know, or something. You found
the algorithms have sent you. Do you have a dog? Do you have a dog? Stay. Oh,
there she is. Okay, hold on.
To you.
Add as moderator. That doesn't help though. I mean, I'm happy to add you. Okay, remove from live video. It says remove from live video. Pin.
Seeing that option. I didn't know you could do
I can add her as a moderator, but I don't know.
If you go down, do you see on the bottom where there's the comment bar and then there's the little video with the plus? And then there's the one right next
Request
to
to join. Accept. Okay, let's see what happens.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
You feeling it?
I'm feeling it.
But that's so weird that Hey, hi!
Worked. I've been trying to join for the last little while. I've been clicking the join button, but it just wasn't happening.
I have no idea. I'm so sorry.
Didn't even see your name roll up, but that's okay. Maybe it's because you're very far away.
Maybe.
Yeah. I did have to change devices because it was like this ongoing saga when I was trying to join. It wasn't letting me. So now I've changed, but now I'm not really set up for this one. So I'm just going to try and reset up a little bit so I can actually get closer and be a little bigger. And there we go. Hang on. Is that better?
Well, when we're going to get ourselves adjusted, Sharon, and the version of this that I put on YouTube will have all of the pomp and circumstance at the beginning.
all removed. We'll all look so smooth and organized. Like I just clicked the button and it all worked perfectly.
Oh, it's fantastic. She puts a little makeup on us, gets a little bit of mascara
so
going on. It's like,
nice.
oh, this is
So I didn't look, do I look
smooth.
like I just come straight in from training dogs?
I mean, that's cool.
The Australian summer heat.
Summer heat.
I have an obsession with Australia. Like I have Australian clients and I just become friends with them, and then we have this whole thing. And I'm sure that that's how it is with Australians and Americans. Like, what can we laugh about of the absurdity of the other?
Yeah.
Because it's just Australia, to me, is the only other place that's as outlandishly bizarre and strange as some of the places in America. And I love that about Aussies. I really do.
Yeah, and we're really good at just dealing with, like, we're actually pretty good at coping. We just go, yeah, okay, like, the place is crazy, it gets crazy hot, it gets crazy cold. It's like, you know, droughts and flooding rains is actually in our sort of stuff. Like, so, and we just cope. We just get on with things and cope. That's what we do.
Good resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe a lot of resiliency.
A lot of resilience.
Well, out in the bush.
And humor.
Right.
Lots of humor. Humor helps.
Yeah,
humor helps.
There's snakes in people's
There's
shoes.
a lot of snakes. There's a lot of spiders.
You've convinced half of the Americans that spider clouds are a real thing, and that spiders go, and you're not supposed to say anything though, Denise. You're supposed to just play along. If you see them doing it in the comment section, you're like, yeah, it's so scary. Yeah. And people believe that there are clouds with spiders that drop down on you. She said it's her.
Well, that's not too far out, because have you ever been in one of those things where, I'm not sure exactly what happens, but the spiders are in a web and the webs get released, so they literally do fall out of the sky.
Through the air.
Oh, yeah.
And that's right here in very boring San Francisco. So every once in a while we'll have those spiders all come raining out of the sky, and
no,
it's kind of gross.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So
Sharon, what part of Australia are you in?
I'm on the East Coast, so I'm not too far from Sydney, which is probably a place some people would be familiar with. It's our state capital. Yeah. So on the coast. I'm about 3 hours from Sydney.
What's the name of the town?
I'm in it's suburbs, Raymond Terrace, but near Newcastle. Newcastle's a fairly well known. It's one of the larger ports.
Yeah. Okay.
One small dog wants to go out. So I'm excited you're here. And when you contacted me and we just had a brief chat, you brought up the issue of counter conditioning specifically. And two things came to mind, and it's something I think we've talked about a bit. One is, not everything a dog does that we don't like is based in fear. That seems to be not well. Right now, especially in our world, the more positive reinforcement based, we default very, very heavily to assuming that absolutely everything is fear. And actually, I was kind of thinking about, like, what do I know in terms of dog body language that I'm looking at a dog who's having a display? And as I was thinking about it, I don't think I can tell a person if it's based in anger or fear without context. I mean, because, okay, the dog is hackling, growling, doing weird shit with its tail. All the things that I see in fear, I also see in forward aggression, potentially. Mm-hmm. So then I need to know more. I need to know, well, what does the dog look like the rest of the time? Does the dog try to get away if it has a choice? Or does it, like, I need more information. And if you have tells that tell you, no, this is an angry dog versus this is a fearful dog, I would love to hear more about it. Because maybe I'm just really remiss in my knowledge, but I think I need context to. I think
that depends a little on obviously the natural traits of the dog, but a little bit maybe on the types of dogs you mainly work with that do show a lot more of that quite confident aggression or quite forward response to fear, whereas that's not the general population of pet dogs. Like the general population of pet dogs, it kind of gets easier to see. Like people just miss it. Like the dog clearly is showing fear. Like the dog clearly is showing lots of things that we would recognize as fear responses in amongst, maybe going forward, lunging, barking, but there's a lot of tail down, there's a lot of, lowering of the body, there's a lot of information in there. But I do think the facial muscles anyway show a lot. We sort of all can see the difference between a dog that's confidently, let's say happily going forward, like They're confident about what they're doing. There's no fear. They're just happily going forward, with some maybe lunging, barking. But you see that more relaxed facial muscles. Like, yes, there's tension in the body that's associated with the arousal, but it's not the same as a dog that's not confident. Then you start to see that different tight sort of facial muscles, So I think even with the dogs that are more likely to move forward to deal with their issues, there's still lots of hints in there that this dog's not overly comfortable about what they're doing. But then
That
it really
is
does also
so
come down.
true with bullies. Do you see a lot
Yeah,
of bully breeds?
yeah,
I see that so much with the bully breeds.
yeah,
Is they have the tendency by nature to be forward, but they're not confident.
yeah.
And so it looks different. Like
It
it just
does.
has this, I hate to say it, but I think it's an
Conflicted.
analogy that everyone will be. Yeah, it's almost like when you see a really big guy that's like trying to compensate
Trying
by
to look tough.
being loud or
Yeah,
looking tough, and you're like, oh, you're like a little boy, and there's
yeah,
something about it that you can kind of see. That's what it reminds me of. I'm sorry to
yeah.
interrupt you.
No. Versus the really confident person is clearly very
Yeah.
confident. The body language is confident. There's no conflicting body language. There's no mixture of body languages. Like, it's either, if it's, as soon as you see mixture, as soon as you see that conflicting body language, okay, parts of it look confident, but parts of it don't, well, straight away you go, okay. But I do agree, like with Denise's point there, that I think in the more force-free community, everything has been put down to fear and anxiety. Fear, anxiety, pain. Obviously, the dog's fear, anxiety, pain. That's everything. But I do think on the other side of it, when I'm working
Pain.
with people that are less that way inclined in their philosophies, they put none of it to that. So it's a little bit like you get like, they're like, well, the dog's just trying to do this. It's trying to put it over on us. It's just irritated. It's just frustrated. And you're like, well, actually, no, there is some fear in there, or no, there is some pain in there, or whatever. So you do see both extremes. Like, we see people that think nothing can be put down to fear, and then we see people that put everything down to fear. Yeah.
We are so wired to kind of default to our group. And
Yeah.
I do not doubt for a moment that there are a lot of fearful dogs out there.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes I'll, be listening to somebody explain how it's all about fear. And I'm not arguing with them, because I don't live with their dog. I don't know what their dog is like day to day. But just when I'm watching it, I'm thinking, I think the dog looks like they're having a good time. Now, like I said, I don't argue with people who are living it, right? But sometimes I think we just have a mental tradition that says we have to assume the dog is trying to chase the car because he's afraid. That's not what I see. That dog looks pretty happy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe. But I don't know what to say. I think we do default to our groups often, rather than the information we actually have in front of us. Or, as you have talked about, not everything is based on emotion anyway. So you can go a whole nother layer down. And now things start getting, in my opinion, really interesting when you start talking about instincts. What do you think about that? I mean, where does instinct play into reactive behavior?
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem is defining reactive behavior, where some people will only be grouping those dogs that clearly are lunging, barking, maybe out of fear, or maybe, let's say, there's some aggression in there for whatever reason that's driving it. But then you've got other people that the dog's just jumping around, leaping up and down and wiggly and out of control, excited, and they go, oh, my dog's reactive. And so if we were to encompass everything, if we were to just, let's say, every dog that loses their shit at some point, or every dog that jumps up and down and gets excited and barks and lunges, let's say what could be driving those things. And there's emotion. I mean, there's excitement, then that'll probably morph into frustration at some point, because they're being thwarted from doing what they want to do. They can see something, like they can see a goal they want to get to, and they can't get to it because they're being blocked. And so then you've got some frustration will happen. So you've got things like excitement, you've got frustration, you've got fear. But then in amongst it, you've got behaviors that are driven by innate traits. So maybe, say, intolerance of other adult dogs, or you've got guarding instincts, or whether that's guarding a property, or whether that's, running up and down a fence line, territorial type behavior, whether that's guarding as in person, guarding the person they're with. You've got prey behaviors. So you've got maybe the dog's like seen a squirrel and they really want to go, and now they're being blocked and now they're frustrated. So you're always going to have at some point, that hazy line between when can we say it's emotion and when is it instinct, because sometimes they're going to get tangled, because the dog might experience joy when it's doing something that's innately rewarding. So you've got the innate driver, the dog's innately driven, so innate motivation to perform a certain behavior. They're innately reinforced by performing that behavior. They just love doing that behavior. It comes naturally to them. But then once they've practiced that over their life, then yes, that might trigger by instinct or by, just the innate trait being driven. But then you've got layered on top of that, the dog actually enjoys it. So now you've got some enjoyment in there, which, and then if that's like excitement is only anticipation of joy. So if they're anticipating excitement, so they go, oh, when I come into this building, then I get to, do whatever, law course or something. Then that now you've got all these behaviors spilling out because they're excited about doing something that actually is still driven by an innate trait. You only have to watch dogs that are losing their shit at the start of tracking or at the start of, nose works to know that even though the behavior might be innately driven, when they're being restrained initially from doing it, you've got emotion because you've got the anticipation of doing that behavior. And then you've got your generalized, like all of those things you could still say are state driven, are situation driven, because there's a stimulus, there's the environment, whatever, there's context cues. But then there's just like state driven, like the dog actually just gets overly aroused with no particular target. Like there's no actual motivation. They're not trying to get to something or trying to attain something. So now you've just got state driven arousal. They get overexcited, and then these dogs are just wiggling and jumping up and down, but they don't even have a purpose to what they're doing. They're not trying to get to something. So you've got all of those, and then you've got habit over the top of that. So really, if you wanted to just break it down, you could say emotion, instinct, and habit. It's going to be driven by one of those three.
Let me think.
But it's
okay.
But obviously you've sometimes got these hazy areas between the three, because habits have developed because of innate traits, or emotions are building because they're anticipating doing something that's innately rewarding. So you've got lots of crossover in there.
Well, how about something like a dog who's intolerant of other adult dogs? Like if you were going to just walk through that one example, what would you put as the instinct? Or
that's the innate trait. The innate trait is that dog genetically is wired to not tolerate other adult dogs in its space. So the innate qualities are triggered immediately. They see that stimulus. It's just triggered to not tolerate it. It's intolerance. It's irritability. It's still usually we can say frustration covers lots of things, because usually it's the frustration we see because they don't get to just go and do the thing they want to do, which is tell the other dog to leave in close quarters. And so because we restrain them from doing that, or we ask them to do something different, what you're seeing is frustration. So frustration is always going to be either grouped in the category of like thwarted frustration, so not allowed to do something that they want to do, or irritated, which is when they're being asked to perform a different behavior to what they want to do. So you're irritating them because they're like, I don't want you to touch me now, or I don't want to stay in this sit stay because I want to go and chase that dog, or whatever you're asking them to do. Or you've got disappointed frustration when they're getting less than what they expect from a situation. Or you've got anxious conflict when the dog's like uncertain because there's two different conflicting things. So maybe the person's calling them and they kind of want to go to the person, but then they know when they get there the person's going to be angry with them, and then they're like, okay, now I'm conflicted. So frustration is going to fall in one of those four categories. And then of course frustration will tip over to anger depending on the natural traits of the dog. So because anger itself is like, it's a secondary, it tends to be called sort of a secondary emotion, because it's always going to come from something. So either pain, like physical or psychological pain, someone hurts you, or you stub your toe or something, or fear can lead to anger, so physical or psychological threat. Frustration can lead to anger, so being asked to do something you don't want to do, or being stopped doing something you want to do. So nice big tangled mess of where all these emotions
is. So first of all, is frustration an emotion? Do you call that an emotion?
I put it into the category of it's not really. I mean, frustration is the thwarted ability essentially to do what you want to do, or loss of control of agency and those sorts of things. But I tend to group it into an emotion when I, like in my classes and things, I talk of it being an emotion, because I think a lot of people think of it as an emotion. They'll say fear, excitement, frustration. To me, really, emotions, are more sort of like from a dog perspective, in terms of just wanting to be able to work with a dog, it's going to be like fear at one end, excitement at the other. You've got all the positive stuff, all the negative stuff, you can shove it all to each end. And frustration becomes complicated because really it's a negative emotion, or it's a negative state.
Right.
Let's say state.
Right.
It's a
It's
negative
not pleasant.
state.
Yeah.
No, it's a negative state, but it's not the same as fear. You know,
No,
and
it's not.
we know this in a practical perspective. It's really important that, because, for example, how many times have we heard, like well, I know in my classes, I'm sure you guys would have heard this lots, but people will have one day where their reactive dog, you know, they weren't managing the situation super well, and their reactive dog had this episode where they saw a dog and they started leaping and lunging and barking. And they're like, oh, I've set myself back so far now because I've had this outburst. And you're like, not if the dog was just excited, not if the dog was just frustrated because they wanted to go and either interact with that other dog, play with the other dog, tell the other dog to leave, whatever. You haven't had a massive setback. That's the only time you have a massive setback is fear.
Yeah.
If you keep putting your dog in situations where they experience fear, that's different, because those pathways, they can be laid really quickly. They can be solidified really quickly. They can be difficult to change. Like fear, well, they don't. Fear pathways just stay there forever. You just have to form a new pathway to sort of have a new response. But other outbursts, no, it doesn't matter. But yet I see these people absolutely so stressed. Oh, I can't leave the house with my dog because maybe my dog might see a dog and lunge and bark. And I'm like, why does your dog lunge and bark? Oh, he's so excited. He just wants to play with other dogs. Okay, well, just take your dog for a walk. Like, do you know what I mean? As long as you're not going to get pulled over and all that. Yes, we don't want them to rehearse it. Yes, we don't want to solidify habits. But one outburst, when the driver's not fear, that's okay. It's like, it doesn't matter.
So how
you
about,
know? But
would you say intolerance then is rooted in instinct? Would you put intolerance as an instinct? Okay, so would I. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, an innate trait. It's just an innate trait. It's genetic.
And so one could argue that all dogs have all of these things. It's just different thresholds bring it out. So one dog might be intolerant very quickly to a lot of things, and another dog might take a lot before it showed. And that's just a genetic reality of different dogs.
I think about children when I think of that example. Some dogs are genetically tolerant of children. They just aren't irritated when kids get in their space and touch them and yell when they run by them. And then other dogs are just like, I'll bite you.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like I tend to think that the ones that let kids hang all over them are crazy, but I see that so much that, you know, I never had a dog that was like this before. You got a pit bull, like you had a lab before, or you had this dog before, you know, and so I think that's one that really sticks out to me as being an innate thing. And then what you said about dogs being in their space, I realized that that's socialization, but my dog, for a lot of that is just experience and who they're around and understanding social cues. But my dog has all the bells and whistles of the socialized dog. I mean, he's out and about in the world, and if a dog gets too excited, or maybe a younger dog that's really exuberant and gets in his face, he will snap at them. He doesn't like it. He's not tolerant of that kind of, he's not really tolerant with it with people either. He will, but for the people in the home, like, we just know that Enzo likes his space, and that's just who he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So somebody asked, can intolerance be influenced by training, and what might that look like?
Yes. The response can be, not the feeling, but the response can be. So, you know, it's the same as dogs that, say, dogs really don't like, they're not tolerant of, let's say they don't enjoy grooming, or they don't enjoy being restrained, or they don't enjoy, we can train them to tolerate that. Now, if there's fear in it, then no, we shouldn't be training them to tolerate it. If there's fear, we should be doing work to stop them experiencing fear. We should change their feelings about the thing. But once we sort of got to the point where, hang on, this dog's not fearful. This dog genuinely is just like, I don't want this to happen. I don't like this. Then we can do training. But then we have to just be mindful of what we're expecting. Like, we're expecting that dog to tolerate something they don't like.
Right.
It's like us tolerating things we don't like. We tolerate things we don't like all the time, but don't do it day in, day out, and don't not appreciate how much we're having to tolerate that thing. You know, it's a difference. Tolerance and enjoyment are two completely different things.
A lot of people are doing that with other dogs. They're like, well, I just want them to like other dogs, and I just want them to this. And I notice that there's a slightly different culture in California that I notice. At maybe Southern California, that'd be more fair. But just everybody's out. Everybody gets their dog and expects it to just
Get along.
well, I want to do, and it's like, wow, that's completely putting aside that dog's natural desire to interact or not.
Which would be fine if they had freedom to choose. But if other dogs have no social awareness and come barreling up to everything on the street and the owners allow for that, then unfortunately the intolerant one is kind of stuck because it can't opt out, which doesn't end well.
Yeah. And I mean, exactly that. I mean, there's a threshold at which we just shouldn't have an expectation beyond that point. Like, should dogs have to, not respond to multiple dogs charging at them and in their space when they don't enjoy it? Well, probably not. I mean, should we have that expectation on a one-off occasion? Yeah, absolutely. We can, even a super dog that really doesn't enjoy at all other dogs in their space, should they be able to cope for a moment if a dog charges up to them? Yeah. But, and this is, remembering, it's not fear. This is intolerance. Should they be able to do it? Yeah, on those one rare occasions where you've put lots of work into them, understanding that this is our expectation, blah, 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 but not on a daily basis at the dog park,
Yeah.
At that one occasion where, you've put the work in, but, you happen to be on a walk and a dog charges up to you and your dog's like, I really don't like this, but sure, I kind of get it socially. I'm supposed to just tolerate this for a moment while someone gets this dog off me. And then we have to appreciate the effort that dog made to not respond. But should we change that to just putting them in silly situations? No, not at all.
And I think people need to recognize that the context in which you trained your dog is the context in which they're likely to succeed. So if your dog got loose and another dog ran up to it and you're not there with your chicken, it's going to be a totally different ball game than if you're standing there with your dog on a leash and you've done 99 training scenarios where a dog walked up and you gave him chicken and then you walked away. It's not likely to generalize if it's truly a part of the dog at an instinctual level, because at that point, they're going to go back to their instinctual response as opposed to the one that I know I have had actually very few dog friendly dogs. Most of they're not dog aggressive, but they're not dog social. For the most part, Zen is my most social. Most of my dogs are dog tolerant, but that tolerance is about 5 seconds. So you can kind of see them. Some dog runs up and you can see them stop, stand, and look at me, and you can start counting. It's like, you have 5 seconds to take care of this, or I'm going to take care of it. Or I will. It's not a fear thing at all. No. It's just I am doing something else right now, and I don't want to deal with you. And I step in. I've got my 5 seconds, but I think people think we're actually changing the way the dog is experiencing the world. And imagine turning introverts into extroverts. It's a very big ask to change fundamental, but that's different than, I do want my dog to have some tolerance. It's better that way. Life is easier, but you don't get to opt out of the responsibility of knowing who the dog is. Exactly. Because they're still in there.
Exactly. And I think that's the big thing when everybody thinks everything is fear. Oh, my dog's fearful of putting the harness on. My dog's fearful of restraint. My dog's fearful of other dogs in their space. My dog's fearful of strangers. When it's not fear, then people are not in a position to make good choices after that, because they spend the whole time doing desensitization and counter conditioning, thinking they're one day going to get the point where the dog's going to love people or love dogs or love having the harness put on or love being restrained. It's like, we have to realize that when it's fear, yes, we can make huge inroads to changing all their feelings about the situation. But when it's not fear, we shouldn't be expecting to change who they are.
I tried to explain this to somebody the other day about my dog not wanting to be handled by the vet. And he said, is he sensitive to handling? And I said, no, he's intolerant. Like, the word that comes to mind, it's my best word. So I'm glad you're using it. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know why he's intolerant. I just know he's intolerant and nothing tells me he's afraid. So the word I use is intolerance. And I'm working on it in other contexts because it would really help me. And now he can do a stand for exam, which is kind of an AKC obedience type. He can stand and stay. And you can see he's like, I hate this beyond reason. Somebody
Mhm.
walks up, touches him 3 times, and he gets his toy. He knows the pattern. And it adds a degree of safety. It gives,
Yeah.
it's a layer, but he is never going, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes when they get old, they get, you know, whatever. But
My horse is like
really?
that. I have a horse like that. And Sharon will be able to, yeah, my horse is, he's not afraid of me. He is not afraid of me. It's been long enough. I understand what's going on now. He just isn't really vibing with it. You know, he just, as a horse, he just kind of likes other horses more, you know? And so for me, it's a big deal to get through a pattern with him where I'm like, wow, we did all of your feet. Look at that. Like, you know, I have this little pattern that I do, and I do these little fingers down his leg. And over time, he has gotten to where he'll just do it. And I can see that he's not afraid, but I can tell he doesn't like it.
So
I
if
don't
you
know why.
use choice,
I don't know.
he'd opt out, which might be
Yeah.
fine. Sometimes it's
He would
fine
be
to
like,
opt out. But you know what? If you need it, it's never going to change. I mean,
Right.
it's like if you tell your kids you can opt out of vaccines, they're going to opt out. They're not going to be going, well, okay,
Right.
as long as I get to choose, I don't want the COVID, so I'll opt in. Adults are like, COVID, vaccine, okay, vaccine. But kids would be like, no, I don't think I'm going to
I'll
opt
be fine
in.
without a shot. Yeah.
So it's
But
like, then you change direction.
that's the motivation part. It's all to do with motivation. How motivated are you to get to the end goal? Like we as humans are often doing things we don't tolerate well because we're motivated to get to the end goal. If the animal's not motivated to get to the end goal, like where's their purpose for tolerating it? And so then we have to put a purpose in there. So then their motivation becomes, oh, if I do this thing, like saying I do this stand for exam, I get my toy. I really like my toy. Sure, I can tolerate it for that. Or the alternative, you know, depending on your philosophy, is the dog's like, okay, I really don't like the other outcome, so I'll tolerate this. But we have to put the motivation in there, like we do with kids, like you're saying, we put the motivation in there. We do with our animals, we have to put the motivation in there because they don't have that innate motivation. They're not trying to overcome things like humans do. You know, they're just like, I don't tolerate things, so why would I ever tolerate it? No,
I just started giving him an extra small meal after I would ride him, and he figured out very quickly because I do this things the same way all the time. It just helps me kind of get through stuff. And he figured out pretty quickly that I couldn't really get him to like walk out. He would just want to turn back to the barn. He would, you know, and after repeating this pattern over and over, and now he'll do it all on his own without me prompting because he wants to get that extra meal. The second we're done, the second we walk back in the barn, he's like, I can tell by the way his face looks. He just does this thing that horses do, and he's like, are you getting it? Are you getting it? You're walking over by the door. Are you getting it? And for him, that it must be okay.
Yeah.
But I've had to accept that I don't have the same horse that my daughter has, that she has this thoroughbred that's just full of heart, will do anything for her just because she asked, you know, just to do it. And my horse is like, don't touch me.
But
How old is your horse?
Don't we see
Old.
dogs that are so similar to those exact two things you described? We see dogs like that all the time.
Yeah.
We see the dogs that are like, I just want to work out what you want. Okay, you're not even making it easy for me. You're making it really confusing, but I so badly want to work out what you want. My motivation is to make you happy. And so those dogs, even if they get frustrated, you might see appeasement behaviors. You might see the dog like, really, I don't understand. Like they're jumping up and down on the person, or they're waving their paw at them, or they're rolling on their back. They're still engaged though, because they want to try and help the person, you know, to get to wherever the person wants to go. And then you've got other dogs that are like, you know what, like I just don't care enough. Like if you don't make this easy, I'm leaving. Like I just turn. And then if you don't let them leave, it turns into avoidance behavior,
Right?
Because they're like, I just don't know what you want, and I don't have any motivation to work it out because I don't love you. And well, it's not love. I don't feel enough desire to play. Like innately, my genetics don't tell me that I need to make you happy. So I'm not here to just make you happy. And then I don't really want the toy that bad. I don't really want the food that bad. So you know what? I'm out here. I'll just check out. And if you don't let me actually leave, then I'll just mentally check out. You know, but if you let me leave, I will actually leave.
I was talking to a woman, a trainer today, and she has a 2.5-year-old Shepherd Husky mix, and she got it because she wanted a challenge, and she got a challenge. And she was talking about recall training. And she said, there was no, I'll come back because I want to make you happy. And the dog maybe took the cookies, but frankly was like, whatever. And she said, a few times she kind of tried her mom voice, like, hey, I said, come. And she said, all that did was make him avoid that much faster next time.
Yeah.
And she said, what eventually worked was she would call, and even if he just took a step towards her, even if he just stopped moving forward and started to sniff, she would say, good boy, and she would send him on again. And she said it was amazing. Within a few days, she stopped being a source of annoyance. Like, she gives words and cues and tries to make me do stuff, and just became a cheerful voice that was participating in his game. And then she said he, on his own, started coming back for food, like even without cues. And now she says he has a pretty darn good recall, especially for a husky, which isn't like a known. And so she's been playing with it with her clients, with some of the more independent breeds, and has been very happy with sort of a successive approximations approach. So you don't actually have to come back when I call you. You just have to just let me know, twitch an ear, like tell me that you heard me, and I'm going to say, yay, good for you. Go back to doing your thing. And that was her ticket. And I thought that's so interesting, because when I use my mom voice with Zen, he respects that. He's like, oh, okay. I did not know you had such an opinion about that. Fine, no problem. No problem. I won't do that. That seems to really bother you. And I don't know that he cares about making me happy. I do think he doesn't want to make me unhappy. And I don't think those are the same.
They're not the same. That's right.
They're not.
Yeah.
And so, like, I joke, maybe this is true, maybe not. I say men in relation to women like to make other people happy. We like to do nice things. We like to watch them smile. We knock ourselves out for children trying to find those Visa moments, right? Which are rare, by the way, for you non-parents out there. Let me tell you, they're rare. Men, I think, are a little bit more focused on making sure you're not unhappy. Yeah. So you're stomping around because they're pigs and they're leaving their crap all over the house. And it's not until they go, oh, you're angry with me, that they're like, oh, you want me to clean up. It's not, gee, I'll clean up for you and watch you be all happy and grateful. And I see my dog a little bit like that. It's like, I love you so much. I don't want you mad at me, but I don't know that he's like, oh, I'm trying to make you happy. I think he's kind of doing his own thing. But this lady's dog is just so interesting to hear it. The mom voice had no effect. Actually, it was quite the opposite. It was like, then I'm done with you.
Yeah. And in the last class that I did, which was the something to do with training differently motivated dogs, whatever it was called, something to do with training differently motivated dogs. And we worked with lots of independent breeds, lots of primitive breeds, lots of dogs that didn't have that innate working line type interest in, making people happy. We had to do that exact thing. It was like, just look for anything. Like, I'm talking approximations you didn't even think existed. Like, they're the approximations you have to look for, and you have to be happy about things that are like it's not just the like splitting and approximations. It's like, you just have to be rewarding them for looking even remotely interested in training with you. Like, you have to reward interest, participation, anything like that. You can't wait until they're doing a behavior you've asked for. And if you think you're going to try and make it happen by using the mum voice, it's not going to work. They're just like, you know what? I'm even less interested than I was a minute ago. I'm not doing it at all now. I'm leaving, And so, and like, these, I've got 3 standard poodles now, but I mean, over my lifetime, I've had so many different dogs. And the transition for me from working line dogs, which I had right before these dogs, to these was huge, because there's no using the mum voice. Like, they crumble. Like, they're not those sort of dogs. They have no ability to push through any adversity at all, like including any frustration, any confusion, any maybe you're not happy with them, like none of that, let alone the actual, it's too hot, it's too cold, the grass is wet, like the grass is prickly, like there's all of those as things as well. But just the emotional stuff, there's no pushing through emotional. So when I see people like doing that, dogs just push through frustration, you've just got to, that's how they become resilient. You just get them frustrated and have them push to the other side. I'm like, I know what sort of dogs you work with, and they're not the same that I work with.
Yeah.
No, getting the little terrier was the best thing for me to learn about that. He has 0 effort to meet me halfway. So with Zen, to his credit, if I want him to do a thing, he will try to figure out what I want. Like, he's in, it's a back and forth, me like, you're close. Burrito really does not care about figuring it out. So the quality of the training has to be way higher. It has to be broken down and clear as a bell, because as soon as there's a gap in my communication, he just opts out. He doesn't go, oh, I wonder if you want me to. He just opts out altogether, and that's the end of it. And the frustration tolerance is non-existent. If he's not having a good time, he will leave and find something else to do. And I can't even imagine how I could force that. Like if I was a more compulsive trainer, I really don't know how that would work. Like it's just hard for me to visualize that it would actually do anything.
I think the answer is most of the time, from a sport perspective, they're just the dogs that are put in the, like, this dog doesn't have a good enough temperament for this sport, or whatever, or this dog doesn't hold up to the training, or this dog's just too hard to train. You know, I think that's what tends to happen, is they just put them aside and get another dog, like in terms of the sporting stuff. In terms of pet behavior, sometimes they can just force the issue to the extent that you get just reduction in all behaviors, like just behavior, the whole behavioral repertoire just shrinks. And look, honestly, for the pet dogs, unfortunately, like, it's not that uncommon to see a dog that has a very small behavioral repertoire and really shows no initiative, and they're actually people are really happy with that dog. Like, they can bring the shopping in, the dog doesn't go and rummage through their shopping, the dog never has its front feet on the counter, it never interrupts people while they're eating food, the dog just lays in the corner and, you know, goes outside with them when they go for a walk and then comes back and lays in the corner. And that actually, for a lot of people, as a pet dog, that makes a lot of sense. It's when people then try to turn that into use those same strategies for a sport dog, it just it doesn't work the same, because the dog's like, I'm not trying things. Are you silly? I'm not trying things. Last time I tried things, I got in trouble. I'm not trying anything. I'm not trying stuff. You're like, well, I kind of need you to try stuff so that we can train new behaviors. They're like, oh, I'm not silly. I'm not falling for that. I'm not trying something. Like, and so it's like, yeah, you might have to change your sort of compulsion ideas if you've got a not hugely resilient working line dog and you have plans of doing sporting stuff, you know.
Well, people really do, whether they mean to or not, they want a unicorn. So it's not that unusual for a person to want a dog that the number of people used to say when I was breeding dog, I want a dog who really likes people, loves to work, good off switch. So they lay out their list, right? And my response kind of was standard. If I ever breed that dog, I'm going to keep it. Like, that dog you just described isn't going anywhere. I mean, that's a miracle dog.
Yeah.
Most dogs have tendencies, and the tendencies that come with strong work, caring what you think, a lot of energy, tends to come with a little twitchy and reactive, and maybe they love mommy so much that they don't have tolerance for others, you know. Whereas I talked about Morgan, a Labrador in a bar I go to on occasion, and Morgan was an old fat lab, and she's perfect for the job. She just hangs out there and kids trip on her and she doesn't care. But I don't think I would want to do dog sports with Morgan. I suspect it would have been a long road. And I'm like, you know what? Either get two dogs. So you can get yourself a burrito and a Zen. You can have a pair. Or really look for what you want and just celebrate it, because it probably comes with some pretty cool offsides. So what do you care about? Like, I love training my dog more than anything. It's the highlight of my day. Gets me out of bed. If I didn't have that, my life would be dramatically reduced. The inability to take my dog to the bar does not dramatically reduce my quality of life. And recognizing that it's a conscious trade-off, and when I'm feeling a little sad that I can't do this with my dog, or like when kids are around, I just have to leave. I can't have my dog there. I feel a little bit of sadness. And all I have to do is just remind myself that it's a trade-off that comes with some pretty awesome qualities. And I know somebody's out there going, oh, my dog is, and then they have a unicorn, and that's wonderful, and I'm really happy for you. But it's a unicorn. It's not the typical, you know, most really good pet dogs do not make good working dogs. And most really good working dogs do not make good. And I'm not saying they make bad pets.
I cannot imagine my boyfriend's dogs being pet dogs. I mean, but when you're out there with them, it's like magical. And you're like, wow, you're so good at your job, dog. And they are, and they're just full of life, and then they are ready to go back in their kennels until it's time for the night run, you know. But with the thought of them coming in the house and
They don't come in?
Yeah.
No pets?
No,
Does
not
he have
unless
any pets
not
in the
unless
house?
there's something wrong with one of them, or one of them's healing from something. Then they get to sleep inside. But no, they have a barn that's back it's like a full setup for a kennel. So they're inside, but not in the house.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's what they know.
Yeah, that's what they know. And I honestly can't say that I think their life is better than my dog's or that his life is better than theirs. I think that they're just different. My dog gets to experience a lot of things that his dogs will never, ever experience. However, my dog doesn't do the job he was designed to do every single day of his life. So I can't really say. I just have learned to look at it like it's not comparable. One is a pet dog and a companion, and these are working dogs that are here doing their job all the time.
Yeah.
Somebody asked about service dogs. A dog who's bred to be a service dog, and I've met some from some of the organizations, the CCIs, the ones that breed specifically labs and golden lab mixes to be service dogs, are truly amazing dogs. I will tell you, the ones I've interacted with, if I ever needed a service dog, I would run, not walk. I would run to one of those dogs bred for it because they have the most unusual combination. One, they can lay under your chair for 4 hours and seem perfectly happy about it. They have they're not speedy like a sport dog is running to retrieve and all. They just have this steady state, low predatory behavior, tolerance through the wazoo. Like, it doesn't seem to matter what happens. And they do the thing for you. You say, pick up the thing. They may not leap out there, run and bring it back, but it doesn't matter. They go out, they do the thing, and then they go back to doing not much. They impress me to no end. They really do. They're not common. And I think it's hard to get it if it's not bred for specifically. I've also seen labs. Labs are truly the quintessential dog in a way because they cover every possible temperament. They really do. I've seen labs bred for search and rescue. The dogs are incredible, sociable, happy, but high in prey, high in energy. It's like you start with yourself a Labrador and you give yourself 20 generations and you can end up with like everything. They're really, in my opinion, amazing dogs.
But I think the service dog thing's interesting because I think when we say drive to work, we tend to think of intensity, and they don't have intensity. They're committed to doing what they're asked when they're asked. They're committed to keeping the handler happy. Like, that is part of their genetic code. But it's not the same as a working dog in my thoughts of a working dog, like a working sport dog, or something that's got intensity, that wants to do it with speed and intensity, that has, what we tend to say high drive. I don't think of service dogs in that way. They're incredibly tolerant. They're able to they've got great off switches. And yes, they're keen to do what's asked. So they have that bid ability. They want to make the person happy. They want to do what the person asks. But that's not, to me, even though it seems like it's a job and they are a working dog, it's not the same as a working line dog in the sense that we tend to think of it, in whether that's bite sports or whether that's agility or whether that's military or, that sort of, or search and rescue, that sort of intensity. That working line intensity is a lot different.
Like, they're more tapping into the instinctual level. When I think of a working dog, I think of a dog that has that predatory sequence, and some part of it was strengthened. Maybe some parts were weakened, like the border collie. Maybe you strengthen the stalk and the eye and a little bit of chase, but you basically you knock out all of the bite or whatever. But they breed in, and then how much arousal does that dog need? Like a really good one. How much independence do they need? They sort of tweak at the instinctual level. And then hopefully you get the rest of the package to pull together, which is, breeding dogs is fascinating because this is the kind of stuff you may not be thinking about it like that. You might not be thinking, well, I'm enhancing the predatory sequence, but the work itself, especially real work, not trial work, you work on a farm, is what will drive your decision making. So does the dog have enough push? Does the dog have enough chase? Does the dog have too much bite? It's really interesting to think about it as an instinctual, that's the level that you're manipulating. And even something like intolerance to other dogs is an instinct. It's, you know, you took the whole predatory sequence, you got rid of all of it except for the kill. That's it. You just, that's all that's left. Don't need that this modern day, but you know.
But even just anyone working with a dog, like training behaviors, you know, training dog sports, you really want a lot. You want a lot of innate traits. Like you want most of the work to be coming from that perspective. Because if they're finding the work intrinsically reinforcing, your external rewards are really only to train the behavior to be the way you want, like accuracy, precision, etc. But they're not required to maintain the behavior, because the behavior is being maintained by the intrinsic reinforcement the dog receives by doing the thing. Whether that's, you know, whether that's a dog that has a huge hunt drive that loves to do tracking and scent work, whether that's a dog with a lot of chase, a dog with a lot of bite, like a natural retrieve, a dog that has an innate drive to retrieve, like all of those things, or just the innate working, you know, that bit ability, that innate desire to just make the human happy and do what the human wants. If you've got all of that, you can, you might still be using your external rewards to create the behavior you want. You might be doing it to get precision or accuracy. You might be using it to add a little more speed in certain cases, but basically it's not required to maintain the behavior. Once you're stuck, like, you know, a lot of the dogs like in that differently motivated class, or well, my own poodles, where they're only doing it for the external rewards. They're actually, the behavior is completely maintained for the external rewards because they don't find the work intrinsically reinforcing at all. They're doing it because it's been trained, and they do it happily. Like, don't get me wrong, this is not to do with tolerance or fear or like or dislike. They do it happily, but they're not, there's nothing in it that actually, they're not burning to do it. There's no burning desire in there. They're not receiving intrinsic reinforcement just for doing it. So then those external rewards are so critical. Like you have to be so clever. If you want to be able to get in the ring and do 10 minutes without rewards, then you're going to have to be very clever at maintaining those behaviors at their peak through external rewards the rest of the time, because otherwise you're going to get a performance that's going to get weaker and weaker because they're not finding it intrinsically reinforcing.
Do you think, I don't know, is there research around whether or not some dogs enjoy, let's call it the puzzle aspect of training and learning?
My dog does not.
Okay. I'm curious.
My dogs
Enzo
do not.
has a very high frustration level for figuring things out. I would say that he's that is probably the most frustration that I get from him, is when he's like, I don't understand what you want. And it'll be something that's really would not be that difficult for another dog. It could be something as simple as standing on a platform that's a little bit weird to him. And he's like, I don't really want to do that. And you keep asking. And I know he's not afraid. Like I don't know why I put that in air quotes, but I know that he's not afraid of it. And I just have to keep asking, but I can see the frustration building.
Right.
He'll chuff at me.
Yeah.
You know, he fidgets and moves, and I'm like, bro, it's like 2 steps. It's not even that. It's not even that hard. And I don't know that I had a dog like that before, because I surely would have noticed. You really don't like I would never be doing complicated behavior chains with him, because he's just like, you know, he just doesn't care. He doesn't care about figuring it out. He just cares about being with me.
Yeah.
You know, he cares, he wants the cookie, but if it's something that he has to do a whole lot of problem solving for, he's like,
not fun. So I had a dog named Reika, and I took her to France to breed her. And when I was there, you kind of had these opportunities every once in a while to get her out and exercise her, right? But it wasn't normal life. And so I was sort of making do. And so I would throw the ball for her a lot, which I don't normally do, just to let her exercise a little, because she's going to go back in the car. And she's perfectly happy playing ball. That was fine. And then I got to a place where there was a dog training field, so I could actually work her. And I felt like she was so much happier earning her ball than just playing ball. Like, I just felt like for her, the using her brain, and I don't know what aspect of it, if it's the listening and getting the cues right, if it's the partnership, I don't know. But I felt like she was much more satisfied as a result of thinking and paying attention than just kind of randomly chasing the ball back and forth, which I, it was just kind of interesting that it was like, you can have it for free. And it was like, I kind of want to work for it.
Yeah. But some dogs do. They love the challenge. They love solving puzzles. They've got a lot of persistence, and they just will keep working on a task, but I mean, again, that does all still come down to some of those innate qualities for perseverance and resilience. So if my dog dropped like a piece of food or a ball or something that they wanted behind the lounge, my dog, or behind the sofa, my dogs would literally go, oh, that's a shame, I'll see if I can get it. Oh no, oh damn, I'll have to go and find something else to do.
There would be
That's
no
it.
effort.
Like there's no, whereas I've had dogs in the past that would actually destroy the sofa to get to the ball, because that's their sole focus. They're just so able to focus, and they're so wanting that they don't like walking away from a problem, that they will just keep going and going and going because that's what they want to do. Whereas mine would literally just go, oh, I'll see if I can try from this side. Oh no, I can't reach it. Oh well, I wonder, I'll just go and sit out and have a sunbake on the lawn instead.
What a shame.
No,
Such
even
a
if
shame.
it's their favorite toy, even if it's food, and I mean, it's like not like they don't enjoy food, these dogs, but they're not going to push through. They're not going to put in effort. They're not going to problem solve to access something. And that's an innate thing. I think you could actually make them hungry and they still wouldn't. Like, it's not to do that. It's a mental trait. Like, they're just, some people are like that.
Yeah.
Honestly, some people don't love problem solving, and other people can sit down with a really hard crossword and love it. And other people would think that's the worst thing, the day.
Doesn't have that push.
Yeah.
So that dog I was talking about that preferred to work, one day I left her loose in the van, and she got a ball, and the ball got wedged under one of the seats. And by the time I got back, she had completely removed all of the filling from the underside. And when I opened it, it was like something had exploded in there, because there was the foam pieces just everywhere, because she could not get her ball. It got wedged under there. So that was a good example of two different approaches to losing access to what you care about.
Enzo would try for about 30 seconds. He's in the middle. He would try, and if he can't, then he's like, So
Frida would come and find me.
It's interesting.
He would come and find me. He'd be like, I have a problem. I have a problem.
Yeah, mine would probably do that.
Yeah.
But it's that thought that we can change those things that always worries me in the dog training circles. The thought that, like, well, my dogs just need training in perseverance and resilience, and then they suddenly will turn into these, dogs that will scale tall mountains to get to things. It's not. And that's why we see the difference between, like, a good search and rescue dog that will scramble up a building and climb across rubble and do whatever to get to the goal, and, the other dogs that just won't. And, you take that to a pet dog. One dog's going to destroy your sofa to get to something, and one dog's not. They're two different. They're this, it's just putting those same two dogs in two different scenarios. And we can't. We can. Encourage. We can do things to help our dog be more confident and more resilient. But we can't change everything about their being. We can't change who they are.
It's kind of the same the conversation we had about, can training influence the dog's innate traits? Can you make an intolerant dog more tolerant? Can you make a dog without a lot of persistence more persistent? Yes, but it's always something you're going to work on and maintain, and you're still starting with a basic level, a genetic quality, and then try not to screw it up. Like my own dog.
Think of Burrito, of all the stuff that you've shown with Burrito. If people that have been watching from the beginning, it was like, okay, he likes mice. Okay, we're going to use that. And then, now we're going to do fly ball, but it was like this process of like pulling it out of him. It's been very cool to watch to me.
It's a lot of work. And I think depending on your mental model going in, like, I was not serious about his training. And what I mean, it's not that I don't put in the time, I do. But what I mean is I actually don't care about the results. I'm very process oriented at this point in my personal career. I'm just really interested in seeing how my training will go. And the only reason I compete is to see if it worked. It's not like I'm driven to go to competitions. I'm just like, well, now let's find out. Because if you don't go, you really don't know. You can guess. But with Burrito, the fact that we ran down a lot of dead ends didn't bother me a lot. It was like, well, You know, it would have been different if I had some carrot or stick, you know, out 6 months where I knew that I really had to get this thing done. Like people that train pet dogs and the dogs have issues that are significant in life. So dogs that are biting people or scaring people. That's a different thing, right? Because you don't have the freedom, you don't have the luxury to say, oh, well, that didn't work. He just took out another child. It's like, it's not like that. You kind of have to figure it out. You kind of have to get it right, right? It's important. The thing for me with dog sports, the way I approach them just at this point in my life is not, it's like, this is really cool. I wonder what I can teach you. This is fun and interesting. And I think that model makes it easier on a dog like a Burrito because a Belgian can put up with some of your pressure and stress that you're exhibiting, but a Burrito does not put up with pressure and stress. They opt out. And I don't know then what happens, right?
Yeah. And you know, and that's the thing, you know, I think I wrote a thing, I can't remember, maybe I put it on Fancy Alumni or something, when I was doing that last class, because, you know, just from questions that people had asked, and I was just explaining that the difference, that it still all comes back to that motivation, how much a dog will push through your rules and how much the dog will push through, you know, requirements you put in place. If the dog really wants to do the activity you've got on offer, or really wants access to the reward they're going to get, then they can tolerate a lot to get there. Like they can tolerate a lot of your rules. They can, you know, like of us putting rules in place on how they do it. Just say a dog, you know, really wants to access the food you've got, and that dog really wants it, and they're jumping up and they're doing all these things. And you can put a whole heap of rules about, oh, you must be sitting, you must be backing away, you must be doing this before that you'll get access to food. But if the dog's only a bit like, yeah, I kind of like food, and you start going, you must sit before I put the bowl down, and you must do this and must do that, then they're like, you know what, the food's not that interesting after all. You know, if you're going to put too many rules in place, it's the same with toy play. You know, people see all the social media videos, but those dogs are high drive working dogs that really want that toy, and you can put lots of rules in place really quickly about how they get access to that toy. But if you've got a dog that's like, I kind of like toys, I might play with you, I guess, and then you go, well, these are the rules, and you start putting all these rules in place, they're like, you know what, I don't want to play that bad after all. So the amount of rules you can put in place really come down to the amount of motivation the dog has to access the thing that they're going to access, you know, when they follow the rules. And, you know, I mean, all the way down to, I see dogs that essentially are almost, you know, to the point where they just won't take food off the handler just because they've done a really basic, you know, baby game, impulse control game that a lot of people play, where, you know, it's like, oh, if you just walk up and take the food, I'm going to snap a bowl over it, or if you walk up and take the food, I'm going to put my foot on it, or I'm going to snap my hand closed. But for some dogs, they're like, oh, okay, cool, I'll just take a step back, oh, I get the food now, that's great. Other dogs are like, that was a trick. You gave me no information beforehand about whether that I wasn't supposed to take it. You offered me food, you held it out, I walked up to take it, you snapped your hand shut. I had no information that I wasn't supposed to do that thing. Well, that's it. Now I'm going to be avoidant of food, and I'm going to be avoidant of people that are trying to hand me food. You know, because it's two different mindsets and two different amounts of desire for the product, and two different levels of conflict. Some dogs are conflict averse, and they'll use lots of appeasement behaviors to make the person happy. Some dogs are conflict averse, and they just go, well, I'll use avoidance. I just won't get in situations where I could possibly experience conflict. So
Walk away.
I just won't bother.
Yeah, that's my dog. He's like, okay, avoid, peace out. He just uses
There are also some dogs that I think really do want the things. They have high food drive, high toy drive, but for reasons that I don't really understand, they seem to actively resent being asked to do something to get the thing. And I don't think resentment's the right word, because I don't think dogs harbor resentment. I'm not sure what the word is, but it's okay. It reminds me of like a cat, actually. It's like, it's not that I don't want that thing, but I don't want you to be a part of that. Like, you're not part of the triangle for me. I just want the thing. And it feels different than the low food drive dog that's just sort of meh about the whole thing, or a low try. It kind of feels like, yeah, I do want it. Oh, wait, I have to do something for it. Like, you know, if you ask a kid who's like,
a good word,
they really want new tennis shoes, you go, fine, okay, I'll pay you $10 to wash the car. Okay, no, then I don't. It's not that they don't want the tennis shoes, they do. But
not enough.
Yes, when you add effort in between, it's almost like, whereas you got another person who's like, okay, I can wash the car, then what can I do? When, like, it's a different engagement
Yeah.
in the activity, and they almost seem to enjoy that process of pulling the pieces together and getting to the end goal. Now, I don't know how
I think
those are
a
tricky.
lot of that's grit. Yeah, I think a lot of that's grit related. Like you either have it or you don't. Like my middle child has like layers upon layers upon layers of grit. She will go through the worst thing to get to what some seemingly small thing that I wouldn't make that effort towards. But I know what you're talking about. I've seen, like, once the human is inserted into it, it becomes meh for the dog.
It's almost like the opposite of biddability. It's sort of a
one of the Carrie in the chat said disdain. There's almost a disdain, for like, ugh, well, you're in it now. I don't really care.
I mean, you're fine to have around, but like I've seen this with some huskies.
Yeah,
it's just kind of
an independence.
I mean, you're fine here, and it's nice that you want to scratch my head and all, but it doesn't feel.
But I don't really care that you're here.
It's not a partnership. It's not like
maybe
they have partnership with other dogs doing what they're doing, but it doesn't feel like it requires a human to make their brain light up with happiness. Or something.
Yeah, that's my horse.
Something
worse. We were talking about that.
Okay, so somebody
you
here mentioned Salukis, and it's funny you said that because I've often said that sight hounds are like cats.
Yeah.
So it's kind of they may
and someone said aloof, and that's a common term for it.
Aloof.
Yeah.
The Shiba Inus also don't care.
Exactly.
And some of it does come down to, though, their perception of how hard they have to work. Like something that we think is easy and would be easy for lots of dogs may be considered very hard for some dogs. Do you know what I mean? Like it's that idea that we're going, all we're asking you to do is X, Y, Z. That's an easy thing. And they're like, no, I think that's a high effort thing. You know, so it's like the whole, sitting at the door to be let out, sitting, to get the food, which is not something I'm a huge proponent of, but that's a very low effort behavior for a lot of dogs. It's like, sure, I'll just sit. Sure, I'll just sit and get my food. Sure, I'll sit. But for other dogs, it's like, you know what? That just got too high effort for me. Like, even something as simple as a sit is like high effort for some dogs. Like, I don't want to have to do that thing. And then, but even then, it still comes down to like working with the dog in front of you. It's amazing how many times I see people that are like, okay, my dog has to sit every time I open a doorway. And I look at the dog and it's a dog that's just deferring to them for everything anyway. It's the most mild dog. There's no push in it. There's no initiative in it, nothing. Like, why would you want to layer deferment in? Why would you want to layer that in with that dog? Now, if you've got a pushy dog that's trying to barge through every doorway and the dog's like really confident and showing lots of initiative in lots of situations, then sure, put some other things in place. But if the dog's already not that way inclined, then why do we have these rules for how the dog has to like sit to get their food? It's like some dogs like, you know what? Yeah, I like food, but I'm not going to sit every time just to get my meal. Like it doesn't interest them enough. It's what they would term high effort, even though it's not, we wouldn't think of it.
But what's interesting to me about that, if you think about that, let's say you have a dog that doesn't even care that much and they have to sit to get the food. And you think you're inserting yourself into the puzzle in a way that would build the relationship. But what would actually build the relationship is
annoying
just
the crap out of that dog.
Yes. So instead you could be classically conditioned as I'm the bringer of food. Here it is.
Yeah,
but instead you went and you made it miserable. It's you have this great opportunity.
I see that same thing with check-ins. The amount of people like, just take the dog for a walk. Like, just take the dog for a walk. Now, if you've got a dog that you need to be inserting those check-ins and you need, there's lots of reasons why you want that dog checking in. But if you've got a really independent dog, like independent by nature, not driven to really want to make you happy all the time, and you're not taking the dog out for more than a couple of walks a week, then that dog's probably better off just going for a nice walk, where occasionally you might interrupt and ask them to come back to you or whatever. But if you're going to every 3 steps go, come on, check in. Come on, check in. Come on. Yeah. You just insert. You're like, I'm building a relationship. No, you're not. Well, it's not the relationship you want. You just became annoying. You're just
you're the anchor.
Like you're just annoying.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you've got a dog that isn't naturally driven to really want to be with you, then you need to make things easier and easier and easier. Not like I'm talking in terms of even just your part in it, because I think even in that same article I wrote, where I was saying about rules, I was saying the same about people in the class at the same time. I was saying, if your dog just wants to be with you all the time, then you can put lots of rules on that interacting with you. But if your dog isn't wanting to be with you all the time, don't put a lot of rules in interacting with you. Just be a giver of things. Yeah, here's your food. Here, I'm opening the door because you wanted to. Here, let's just go for a walk and you can sniff and do your own thing. Because as soon as you start inserting yourself in and making rules around interacting with you, they're just less interested in interacting with you than they were before.
Well, yeah, because now you became the anchor rather than the fun. Like, you're holding them back.
Yeah.
Because I want the dog to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go in the car with you because you're going to take me fun places. Not, oh, I'm going to go in the car with you and now I have to sit and down. And I mean, my dog, I can do whatever I want because he's in.
Yeah.
But a lot of pet dogs are really, they're just enjoying their lives. They're so happy when you take them somewhere to run. So take them. Let them do their thing. And they'll know you brought them. They don't have the thumbs, right? So the opposable thumb lady drives the car. So that increases your value. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
And even just letting them initiate interaction. Like, it's amazing how many people, because I think social media is full of the videos of the dogs that are high drive, the videos of the dogs that, you're always working to stop them being pushy and working to stop them, taking advantage of situations. And so these people are just tempted to put all those rules in place with their own dog. But if you've got a dog that already is barely, not that interactive, then if they come up to you and go, oh, hey, can I have a pat? Just give them a pat. Like, you don't have to be like, no, I didn't ask for you to come now. I don't want you to start to get in this habit of interrupting me. It's like, just pat the dog.
You're not supposed to be in the kitchen. Like,
because the next thing you know, if today it's the kitchen, tomorrow it's your car. The day after that, they want to run for president. So that you got to keep your thumb on top of that chihuahua because you just don't know what's going to happen next, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are some dogs.
I think that's it. But there's some dogs
you want to keep your thumb.
There's some dogs you need to. And I mean, that comes back to the reactivity stuff we started to talk about at the beginning. Look, there's some dogs that need information. They need guidance. They need to know what to do in certain situations. And on those dogs, you need to be on top of it. You need to be giving hints ahead of time. Hey, it's not happening. Like, as soon as they start looking at something, you're like, yeah, not happening. Like, I use that phrase to my dogs all the time. Like, my youngest one is very excitable. And so he'll see a dog like at a distance and he's like, starts to get the little growing, the neck rises up and he stands still for a second. I'm like, yeah, it's not happening. He's like, oh, okay. And he just keeps walking. Because, he gets information ahead of time that, no, we're not going over there running and jumping and getting excited. So let's just, it's not happening. But, and if he got in a closer contact situation than that, because, he's a competition dog. So we're at competition, he's under instruction all the time. It's like, okay, we're sitting next to me, or okay, we're, in a down at the moment because there's people doing things, and they get that information ahead of time and then they do that thing and then they get rewarded for it. And I think a lot of people are worried about giving the dog cues in those situations because, again, it comes back to the fact they think everything's going to be based on fear or anxiety. And if it is fear, sure, we don't want to. Like, if we've got a dog that's fearful when another dog's approaching, then I don't want to put that dog in a down state because that's really, really cruel. Like, this dog's like, I'm fearful and there's a dog coming towards me. Now you're in a down state. You don't know what to do about it. That's
now I can't even defend myself if I need to. I would be mortified if I was afraid of something and somebody was like, face down on the ground, lady.
But you know what? A lot of people, though, what we're running into then, if the dog is fearful, they let the dog choose. And I'm like,
that's not good either.
Why don't we make a choice that we know will work for the dog until that becomes the dog's habit? So that is the repertoire. So I know that's going to make you uncomfortable. So we are going to go this way. Like, I'm not going to trap you.
Yeah, but that's different. You're just facilitating escape, essentially. Exactly. You're going, we're going to escape the situation, but with some control, with some understanding, with some, because I've recognized ahead of time, this is not a place where you want to be. Let's help you get out of this place in a very sensible way before you lose it. But that's different to saying you will, downstay while these people go past at a distance that dog's not comfortable with. Whereas if you've got a dog that's like, no, I just really want to play with that dog, or I'm not very tolerant of dogs being in my space, and, once you've done the work to get to the point that distance is appropriate for that dog, so you've done some desensitization, not counter conditioning, but desensitization, then it's perfectly fine and necessary to ask that dog to downstay, because that dog's never going to lose that desire to do the thing it wants to do. The urge is still there. No matter how much work you do, desensitization work, they may develop new habits, and they may have some softened feelings. They may have less intense feelings than they had, but the feelings are still there. So, you know, those dogs need instruction. They need, like, okay, you're going to sit, stay, this is going to happen, then you're going to get a treat, then we're going to move on, or whatever.
And you're going to be okay.
And
there is also sort of a thing that dogs can't handle any stress in their lives. And that's weird. If you just think about your day, like if you just start from the time you got up in the morning till you went to bed, we all experience stress every single day. You know, you were in the car and the light turned red and you're just a tiny bit behind, right? You got to the grocery store and you couldn't quite reach the thing you needed, or they were out. It's acceptable and normal to have degrees of stress, and your dog is going to be all right too. So just because they're frustrated because you didn't throw the ball, because you're moving, you know, little things like that, they don't harbor them and develop weird issues, and you don't either, for the most. I mean, I'm not talking about when 50 things go wrong and like you just, the 51st is just, that's not going to happen. But just in general, normal life stress, we don't actually have to work that hard to get rid of it. It's okay. The dog will be fine. I was going to go outside and train you. I forgot I need to make a phone call. Sorry, buddy, you're going to have to wait. And I go make the phone call. And you can kind of see his little face go, what? But he survives. 2-minute phone call. Now we go out. And those little experiences in life make it acceptable. It's just, you know what? There's going to be things that happen. You'll be fine. We'll all be fine.
But I think it does come down to the intensity, though, or the amount of frustration, or the amount of distress. And so whilst, like, say, my young dog, who is very excitable about, you know, he gets to competitions, he's like, there's dogs, there's people, this is amazing. Now, at his age now, so he's 3 now, then I have different expectations to what I had at his age at a year, as to, you know, how much, you know, now I would be like, okay, down. You're just going to wait there for a sec. I've got some things to do, waiting that down. Whereas at 12 months, I would have been down here, have food, because he needed that. Now, like, I can watch him and he's like, this is hard. Oh, I'd like to be doing, I'd like to get up and go and do that, but okay, I can do this. But if I had a dog that I had to correct, for whatever way you want to say that, you know, in terms of, I had to remind them, like, they were frequently getting up or whatever, and I had to remind them to get back down, I go, that's too much. For me personally, I would consider that too much stress. Like, that dog's clearly not got the skills to manage themselves. You know, there's too much leakage, you know, they're not coping, versus a dog that's like, okay, this isn't pleasant, but I'm coping. I have the skill set to do this. I have the skills to hold myself together. It's not my first choice, but I have the skills to do it.
I want to address this question. Somebody said, I feel like the alternative of not acknowledging the possibility of fear or uncertainty that is driving behavior that many trainers go with causes the owner to become a jerk. And what I think is really interesting about that comment is that people are very kind and sympathetic when they think another is experiencing fear. And yet anger is an equally valid emotion that we don't control. And yet we do not have sympathetic feelings towards those who are angry, even though neither emotion is under our control. Both of them really should generate the same feeling from us of, what can I do to help you work through this? It doesn't matter if it's frustration, anger, fear, anxiety. It's just that somehow humans, oh, poor thing, right? When we think it's fear or anxiety, it would be amazing if we could help people understand that no matter what the emotion or instinct that's driving it might be, it's still not a choice the dog is making to mess with you. The question is really, how can we come out the other side so that the dog, the handler, and society end up better off? And yes, the handling of fear and uncertainty would be a little bit different. You have fewer degrees of freedom. But regardless of which emotion you're dealing with, I think it's really nice if we can say, like, my dog was being a jerk at the vet. He's a jerk. What am I going to say? You know, he is. I still did everything in my power to make it as low stress as I could. And at the end of the day, I covered his eyes. I muzzled him. I gave him medication. And I still held him and got it done. It's like, I did everything I could for you, buddy. Now I got to worry about the vet and making sure they're safe and making sure you get your done, you know. But I might have handled it differently if it was fear or anxiety. I might have gone way higher with the drugs, especially if we're tipping into panic. But my sympathy for the dog is the same because I know he's not happy and I would like him to be in a better place. What I'm not worried about is ruining him for life. I know he's going to get through this. And frankly, I think if I kept doing this, whereas fear and anxiety, I think dogs get worse and worse as they practice it. I think angry dogs sometimes get more resigned. It's like, this stranger's going to put their hands on me. That's really gross. But they did it yesterday. They did it the day before. I know it's going to take 2 minutes. It's like the pattern that Jerri was talking about with her horse. The dog starts to recognize it's this shitty thing, and I know how it's going to go. And when it's done, she's going to take the muzzle off and give me some chicken, and I'm going to go home still pissed. And I'm not going to want to do it tomorrow, but it still gets better. But if we could just get people to ask them, so I think it's just an interesting societal question. Why are we sympathetic to fear and anxiety? And yet when a person is experiencing uncontrollable anger, which feels terrible, why are we not sympathetic? And actually we're judgmental. Yeah.
It's because, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but it takes like a particular stage of your like development as a human to stand across from somebody that's angry and not get defensive about what they're angry about. Like my clients that have really pushed me, that I think you could describe, sometimes they were mad. They were mad at me. They were mad at this.
Mad at the situation.
It took me years of talking to people to figure out how to talk to the people that were angry. Because our immediate reaction as a human when somebody says, I am angry about this, is to put that defensive wall up and start, defending our position. And because it's the same as like when you have a firm belief system and someone challenges that. Well, now you mean I got to dismantle all of this? And so I think that's what happens when somebody is across from us that's upset, that in this client scenario, because we have to bring something out of our toolkit that we don't bring out for people that are just afraid. People that are just afraid, we can pull out very easily, oh, it's going to be okay. But when somebody feels, you can kind of envelop them in that way. But when somebody feels like a ball of fire, you don't want to.
No.
They're prickly.
Yeah.
They're like a little cactus.
Yeah.
And you want to use that same tactic, or be defensive. You want to try to make it better, which that's not necessarily going to work with a person that's angry. I think people that are afraid and hurting in that way have a much more of a tendency to respond to that nurturing kind of response, the supportive response. People that are angry, I think, need their feelings validated. So whether we agree or not, I can still say to the person, I can see how angry and upset you are. And I just want to acknowledge that you have every right to feel that way, that this is very hard. And I'm going to do my best to help you not feel that way. But it's okay. I can take it. If you want to vent, if you want to say, I think this is dumb, I don't understand, I'm happy to explain it, and I'm not going to get mad at you. It took me years like of constantly practicing that. And also, like, to my close friends, I had to start there, by making sure they could say stuff to me that I maybe didn't want to hear, but I would listen and not,
I
light
think
them
when
up.
you do it, like the words you just used would have worked great on me if I was angry, right? So I think when you practice it and you watch the person diffuse, it's very reinforcing.
Very.
It's like, oh, wow. And
My
also
sponsor always said you need to practice the language of things that are difficult for you. So if you have a problem, let's say people pleasing, and you need to practice saying, I actually feel like I have enough on my plate right now, so I'm going to decline that offer. But I'm really glad that you asked me and felt like you could trust me with that. Like, you have to practice actually saying that, or when the moment comes, you start running that old programming. So that was one thing that was really effective for me was listening to a lot of people that were very good at diffusing anger. Hostage negotiators, that was a big one. Never Split the Difference, by the way, is a great book by Chris Voss. That's what he did, and that reference is you can't split human beings. Like you can't be like, okay, give me 2.5 hostages. Like you can't,
Right.
you can't do that.
Right.
You have to actually negotiate. But that's actually where I learned a lot of that stuff. Mirroring, that's a tactic that you know, if you say something, I'm just so pissed about this. I feel like none of this is working. Okay, I'm here. Like I hear you. It sounds like you feel like nothing is working. And then they're like, yeah. And then they go into it kind of even more. And then you grab onto another thing that they said. Okay, so this last week sucked. Yes. And then they keep, and eventually that they're letting the pressure valve out in the presence of someone that's just letting them and listening and being present in the moment. And then what you said about them diffusing in front of you. And the second you see them diffuse, now you can shift into a different gear. Okay, I hope that you feel better. I'm glad that you got that out. I think we should talk about this now that we've gone through that phase, because anger is a phase that you're going to go through in this process. You just had it. It's totally normal. And then they're like, you know, people need to be listened to, especially the angry people. We put so much stock into taking care of the fearful people, and then we miss the category of angry people because it hurts to deal with them.
It's emotionally draining. Actually, it's emotionally draining to deal with anyone
Yeah.
who's very emotional. But yeah, anger has a special category of something, right? When you're dealing with somebody who's really angry, I can do it for a period of time, but it's hard, especially in real life when you feel like they're leaning on you. That can get tough. That can get tough. And something I was thinking about earlier today is the relationship in humans, and it's probably true in dogs too, between fear and anger. So, like, let's say you were at the store with your kid and you said, wait right here. And you went into the bathroom and you came back and they weren't there. And it's kind of like your immediate reaction is, where's my kid? So there's fear. And I told them to stay here, and there's anger. And, you know, I was kind of just thinking about how those two can go side by side, with one being bigger than the other at any given moment. And then when you find your kid, how you can literally go to zero, which just fascinates me. Like, all the fear is gone, all the anger is gone, even though when you were in it, you thought you were going to kill him when you got your hands on him, right? But so emotions can just like literally dissipate so fast under certain circumstances, which just kind of, it was just floating around in my head. And I wonder where dogs are at with that.
Yeah.
Relief, I think relief, yeah.
Relief. Yeah. Yeah. But you do see dogs that can quickly shift, and you see dogs that can't. So if you see a dog that's like, okay, I really want to get to this other dog to play. Okay, I'm really, really excited. I'm really excited. Now I'm being held back. Now I'm getting frustrated but I really want to get there. You know, just say they're walking on leash, they see two other dogs playing. Well, some dogs, if that dog gets away, when they get there, even though they only wanted to play at first, because their arousal is so high and because they got frustrated and got angry, when they get there, they can redirect and they can suddenly have a fight with the dog when they get there, even though that was never their intention in the first place. But then you'll get other dogs that as soon as they get there, it immediately dissipates because they ran, they got there, and now they're just happy to play.
Right.
And I think a lot of that depends on how frustrated they got before they attained the goal. Like, were they that frustrated that they had tipped over into anger before they were released or not? And, you know, like, and that's all just to do with how intense did that emotion get? And is that a dog who's going to tip into anger? Because not all dogs will go from frustration to anger. Like, I mean, for humans, we go from pain to anger, we go from fear to anger, we go from frustration to anger, but not all dogs, and even not all people, will go from I'm so frustrated and then punch a wall. But some people will go from I'm that frustrated and punch a wall. So not all people go from intense frustration to anger. And the same is definitely true in dogs. We see some dogs that can be intensely frustrated and they don't tip into anger. And we see other dogs that don't have to be too frustrated before they do tip into anger.
Yeah. So before because we can't go too much longer, and I really want to hear about your new class. So can you tell me about the class you're going to teach this coming up?
Okay. Yeah, this one in December is actually the a class that I've run a few times before. I only run it about once a year now. It's usually pretty popular. So anyone who wants a gold spot, they usually fill out within the first few seconds. It's about working with reactive and hyper-aroused dogs. So we talk about all those dogs that struggle with arousal, wherever that's coming from, whether it's instinct, emotion, habit. We basically train, we use a practical skill called offered durational engagement, which is about essentially getting the dog to be able to find time between just going from stimulus to response. Like, so instead of see the thing and then react, we actually help them find time between see the thing, have enough time to think before reacting, and then that allows them to sort of put in another alternative behavior. So they see the trigger, they have time to think, and then they may or may not do the behavior depending on what the situation is at that point, but they have time to replace it with a different behavior. So it means we can have context. So for example, if we're walking down the street on a loose leash and we want our dog to see a squirrel and not react, just remain on the loose leash, that's perfectly trainable to get to that point. But maybe when that dog's off leash and under sort of in a situation of free control, got their own free choice to do whatever, they might still chase a squirrel and the squirrel will run up the tree. So we can put context in there so that it's not the same as, you know, the dog becoming, you know, thinking, okay, well, like we see often with aversion type training, where the dog actually learns to avoid the thing because, you know, we don't do that. We're just going, hey, let's find some time, let's think, and let's see if there's a better behavior for this particular situation, and then we can reward that behavior. So it doesn't matter whether it's prey driven, it doesn't matter whether it's driven by emotions. If it's fear, we work on all the strategies we need to actually use counter conditioning to resolve that. But if it's not fear, we have to recognize that counter conditioning, so taking it from a place of excitement to a place of less excitement, is counter conditioning, but that's not usually the methods we go with. But taking something from fear to more enjoyable is something we can do using counter conditioning. But if it's an innately driven response, then we don't even use counter conditioning really, because what we actually do is help the dog to find time to not react and then replace it with an alternative behavior, whether that's ultimately just something that's cued directly from the stimulus. So see the stimulus, turn to us, get a treat and just be calm and keep walking, or whether it's a specific behavior that we ask for ahead of time. So can you maintain that downstay or stay in straddle while this thing's happening around you?
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and so
Very
yeah, we'll have all sorts of dogs. We'll have dogs that where the behaviour is driven from all sorts of different reasons. But we also do cover hyper arousal, like dogs that just like can't, you know, their training sessions are struggling because they just can't focus enough on training because they're so focused on the ball, or they're so focused on the food that they can't think enough to train, or that as soon as the food comes out, they're just like bark, 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 bark. And so we deal with all those hyper arousal things in that same class.
Is this for dog sport dogs or pet dogs or a little of everything?
This is for everybody. We often get pet dogs in this one, particularly because the next class I have in February is training and competing the sensitive dog. So in that class, we mainly have sport dog people. But in this dog, the reactive and hyper-aroused class, we have all sorts. We have lots of pet dogs as well as just because it's through Fancy Dog Sports Academy, we see probably a majority of people have some interest in training and sports because that's sort of the main group that but we do definitely get pet people join that class as well.
I can just say that Sharon puts her heart into her classes. So the responses to your questions are 20 paragraphs long, and they are packed. They are packed with information. So, I mean, I think I know a decent amount about dogs and dog training, but whenever I chat with Sharon, it clarifies things in my mind. So maybe I knew them, but I needed them put in simple words and ways that make sense to me.
Exactly how I feel. Like I could understand everything that you were saying. All of this, I mean, I just work with reactivity and like behavioral cases. And I'm like, wow, I wish I could say that like that.
Well,
it was very like there was a lot of it felt nice to hear everything that you were saying and to reflect on my own training and be like, wow, that's what I'm doing. I certainly wouldn't have said it that nicely, but that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
No, it's
Well,
good.
I
It
hope
took me
people
a long
follow
time to learn
you.
that about counter conditioning.
I know you don't do a ton on social media, but I hope people head on over and follow
I
you
don't
because it's fun to watch your
do
stuff.
social media. That's my problem. I don't do a ton. I don't keep up. Yeah, I don't keep my social media platforms up to date. I should.
Well, it's funny
yeah.
you mentioned that because Jerri is going to teach a webinar for FDSA on social media. And on how best to use it, how to understand the different platforms. So I'll be there
for that.
Yeah,
I will absolutely be there
I
for
think
that.
many of us we're going to be in the front row, Jerri. We're going to be in the front row,
My God,
raising our hands.
Yeah.
So we're excited.
Well, I'm excited, Sharon. I'm gonna go and look at that class because I think that it sounds awesome, and I'm sure that there's stuff in there that I could learn to take back to my clients.
Yeah,
for sure.
It is content heavy. There's a lot of reading, but I always say to people, just like, don't stress about that. It's a bit like buying a book when you buy the class. If you don't want to read it all, it's all got subheadings. Just go to the bits you like and ignore the bits you don't want to. So it works.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have to take a photo of us? Okay.
Yes. Well,
smile.
No, it's on your page. It'll be on your page.
Is that okay?
Yeah, but I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Yay, we got it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the first time we've done it on your wall. You don't have to send me the video, though. I can scrub the watermark from your wall and put it on YouTube.
Good, because I can't make videos download off of IG. I do the little download thing, and it says downloading, and they never finish. So other people have to do it for me.
I bet they're in
like
some mystery folder that you don't know about, and one day you're going to find it, and there's going to be 75 lives.
That's maybe that's something you can cover in your webinar. We can ask that in the Q&A of the webinar.
How to solve Denise's specific problems. 1 hour. Ladies, so good to have you. I love these Wednesday chats. Yeah, Sharon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Super fun. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Bye, Denise.
Bye.